Hi everyone, I'm Sleepless Scientist. Tonight we're not going to chase sheep or count stars. No, tonight we're going to do something far more dangerous for an overactive mind. We're going to ask what space really is. You're lying there in bed, barely moving, just a slow breath, a flicker in your fingers, the occasional grunt from your stomach, protesting your midnight snack. And yet, your thoughts are already stretching far beyond the walls of your room. Funny how stillness can feel like motion when your brain won't shut up. Because here's the weird part, you feel like you're in space. Like your room has volume edges, a floor and ceiling. But is that space just empty air, or is it something more fundamental, something deeper? Let's start small, like embarrassingly small. Major scientific fact. According to modern physics, space isn't a passive backdrop. It's an active player. Einstein's theory of general relativity showed us that space and time are part of a flexible fabric called space-time, which can bend and stretch depending on the presence of mass and energy. Imagine putting a heavy bowling ball on a trampoline. That sag it makes, that's mass-bending space. Now imagine a marble rolling near that dip. It curves toward the bowling ball. That's gravity. Not some invisible force pulling things magically, but just objects following curves in space-time. And right now, as you lie flat on your mattress, you're not really still. You're gently warping the space-time beneath you, like a sleepy little planet. Adorable. Meanwhile, your phone beside you also warping space-time. Your toenails. Yep. The crumbs on your pillow from last night's snack. Tiny little space-time sculptors. But don't let that get to your head. Here's your odd fact for the night. There is more space in a hydrogen atom than matter. That is most of the universe. Even you is mostly emptiness. If you removed all the empty space from every atom in your body, you'd be about the size of a grain of salt. A weirdly heavy, very grumpy grain of salt, but still. So what are you really lying on? Not just a bed. You're lying in a thin wrinkle in space-time, suspended inside a structure that is vast, strange, and somehow still holding you with quiet care. You reach your hand out into the air beside your bed. Nothing there. Just space. But what is that space? Is it a container? Is it a field? Is it a hologram projected by something deeper and less graspable? Scientists still debate whether space is a fundamental part of reality or if it's something that emerges from deeper quantum laws. In some theories like loop quantum gravity or string theory, space itself may be made of microscopic units, a kind of quantum scaffolding too small to see or feel. Which means what you're waving your fingers through right now may not be empty at all. It may be buzzing with structure. So picture this, you're in your room. You think you're here now. But the boundaries you feel, the edges you swear you can sense in the dark, they're not real in the way you think. They're interpretations, constructs. Even your sense of being in a location is a brain-generated simulation built from electromagnetic signals. Evolution's best guess at how to navigate whatever this mess is. Your walls, virtual in your brain, your ceiling. A memory with sharp corners. And this bed, a floating island in a sea you can't see. And when you close your eyes, you float, unanchored, weightless in thought. Space stops being a room and starts becoming a question. And that question hums. What are you inside of you don't know? But tonight, you're going to find out. You roll to your side. The air on your cheek is cool. Outside, some distant car whispers by like a satellite in low orbit. And maybe, just maybe, you start to feel it. Space isn't just what's around you. It's something you're inside of. And maybe even something that's inside you. The clock next to your bed hums quietly, as if it's trying not to interrupt your thoughts. Which is funny, considering what's been occupying your brain lately. Nothing. No, really nothing. You've been wondering what's in all the space that isn't occupied by things. Like when you point at the gap between two stars, or the silence between your thoughts. What exactly are you pointing at? The word empty seems like a trap. Because here's the twist, major scientific fact. What we once thought of as empty space is not actually empty. It's teeming with activity. The quantum vacuum, the lowest possible energy state, is constantly fizzing with virtual particles popping in and out of existence. They come and go so fast you can't detect them directly, but their presence can be measured in things like the Casimir effect, where two metal plates in a vacuum feel a slight pull toward each other because of vacuum fluctuations. So even the quietest part of the universe is never really silent. It's just whispering in a language too fast and too small for you to hear. Imagine lying in your bed staring up at the ceiling and truly knowing that between you and that white plaster are trillions of invisible events, quantum fluctuations flickering like fireflies on a subatomic scale, and you thought your room was boring. But here's your odd fact. In 2010, scientists discovered that some types of empty space or vacuum states have negative energy density. This means they can act like a kind of anti-gravity. Theoretically, it's possible to stretch space or even build warp bubbles using these bizarre properties, though good luck. Getting NASA to fund Space-Time the Inflatable Edition. And yes, it's all theoretical. But just because something's not visible doesn't mean it's not vital. Like your anxiety, or your high school math grades. Anyway, tonight you lie in the dark, thinking not just about the space you're in, but about what that space contains when it's supposedly empty. Maybe that's why it feels so heavy sometimes, even when no one's in the room, even when the light is off. It's not just that your thoughts have weight, the vacuum has weight too. And this brings you to one of the strangest, most uncomfortable scientific crossroads. Scientists still debate whether space is truly continuous or if it's made up of indivisible chunks, a bit like pixels on a screen, except way, way tinier than anything we can currently observe. Quantum field theory treats space as a background for particles to do their weird dances. But other theories like loop quantum gravity suggest space is woven from tiny loops, knots, threads of reality, maybe even vibrating. So now you're not just lying in bed, you're lying on a woven quilt of space stitched from quantum strands and ghostly probabilities. A net you can't fall through because falling is just motion through this stitched together nothing. And maybe, just maybe, this nothing is the most something thing you've never seen. You reach your hand out again. There's nothing there. Or maybe there's everything there, just not in a form you can grasp. It's like asking your goldfish to describe the bowl. They feel the water, sure. They move through it, but they never quite see it. And you're the fish. Space is your bowl. And tonight you've started noticing the glass. Your breath is slower now. Not sleepy exactly, but thoughtful. Your pillow cradles your head like it knows something you don't. You stare into the dark and picture the universe not as stars and galaxies, but as a giant pulsing cloud of invisible stuff that only pretends to be empty. It's a beautiful lie. A comforting one, too. Because it means you're never really alone. Not truly. Even in the quietest moments, especially in the quietest moments, space is speaking. You just need to learn how to listen. You glance at the clock again. It hasn't moved much. Or has it? There's always that weird gap between seeing the time and feeling it pass. You blink and suddenly it's 3 minutes later, or maybe 3 hours. you're not really sure. That's the slippery thing about time. It feels solid, dependable, like the tick-tick of your old kitchen clock. But tonight, you can't shake the question. What is time really? Major scientific fact. Time in physics isn't a universal flow. According to Einstein's theory of special relativity, time is relative. It moves differently depending on how fast you're going or how close you are to a massive object. For someone zooming through space at nearly the speed of light, time actually slows down compared to you lying here in bed, doing nothing but wonder whether your left foot is colder than your right. That's not philosophy. That's tested physics. Astronauts on the International Space Station age slightly more slowly than we do on Earth. So time isn't something ticking out there in the world, it's something built into you, into how you move and what you experience. And here's where things get even stranger. What you're actually experiencing, this whole now business, isn't real in any universal sense. The present isn't a fixed point. It's different for every observer depending on motion, gravity, and perception. In other words, your now might not be someone else's now, not even someone across the room, which would be awkward but also kind of poetic. Odd fact, the human brain perceives the present with a built-in delay about 80 milliseconds. That means you're always living just behind the real moment. You're not in the now, you're in the just after. Which is why when you stub your toe, there's that tiny moment before the pain catches up. Your nervous system plays time like a laggy live stream. So as you lie there staring into the ceiling texture and pretending you don't feel crumbs in the sheets, you realize time feels so real only because your brain makes it feel that way. You stitch past memories into coherent sequences. You predict what might happen next. You divide your experience into neat little buckets before bed during insomnia after I finally fall asleep. But your brain is doing all that on the fly. It's improvising. Kind of like jazz if jazz involved more panic and fewer saxophones. You're not a clock. You're a storyteller. And the story you tell needs time to move forward, so your mind creates the illusion that it does. Scientists still debate whether time is fundamental or emergent. In some radical theories, like those from quantum gravity or string theory, time might not even exist at the deepest levels of reality. It might emerge only when many particles interact. Sort of like how traffic appears when you have lots of cars, but doesn't exist if you only have one. That would mean time isn't built into the universe like bricks in a wall. It's more like a shadow, cast by something else. You sigh. That's a lot to think about at 1:48 a.m. But somehow it helps. Because if time is this bendy, glitchy, made-up thing, then maybe the pressure to use it wisely is kind of a joke. Maybe wasting time is just another form of participating in it. And maybe that little loop you're caught in, check the clock, sigh, try to sleep, fail, check the clock again, isn't wasted at all. Maybe it's part of how your mind rehearses reality. Even if that reality is mostly ceiling shadows and slightly too warm sheets. Time isn't ticking. It's whispering. Changing shape depending on where and who and how you are. And tonight you're not a victim of it. You're a traveler inside it. Soft breath. Slower thoughts. You're doing fine. You're not behind. You're right on time, whatever that means. You roll onto your back and stare at the ceiling like it's some kind of cosmic chalkboard. You trace imaginary constellations between bumps in the plaster, pretending you're drawing space-time diagrams instead of just avoiding sleep. And then just like that, you're thinking of a trampoline. Yes, a trampoline. Not because you want to bounce on one, although tempting, but because tonight's brainworm is gravity, and this is where Einstein's metaphor bounces in. Major scientific fact. Gravity, according to Einstein's general relativity, isn't a force that pulls things the way Newton imagined it. Instead, mass bends the fabric of space-time itself, and what we experience as gravity is simply objects following those curves. Imagine a big rubber sheet. You drop a bowling ball on it, it makes a dip. Now roll a marble nearby and the marble spirals in. Not because it's being pulled, but because it's just moving straight along a curved surface. That's what your body is doing right now, even though you're still. You're actually falling endlessly sideways around the Earth. You're in orbit, like a very relaxed satellite, wrapped in a blanket. The mattress creaks slightly beneath you, and for a second, you imagine it's the curvature of space-time groaning under your mass. Sorry, space-time, you whisper into the darkness. Shouldn't have had that third bowl of ramen. Odd fact, if you could shrink Earth to the size of a sugar cube without changing its mass, it would become a black hole. That's how much gravity depends on density, not just size, which makes sense. Your emotions feel heavier at 3 a.m. Not because they're big, but because they're dense with unprocessed thoughts. Anyway, back to our space trampoline. This metaphor has its limits, of course. Space-time isn't actually rubber, and we live in 4 dimensions, not 2. But the metaphor helps. Mass tells space-time how to curve. Space-time tells mass how to move. And just like that, you're no longer lying in bed. You're bending reality. You're a mild dent in the fabric of existence. Kind of romantic in a lonely sort of way. Scientists still debate whether space-time is smooth or made of discrete units, especially near extreme situations like black holes or the Big Bang. Some theories suggest that the fabric breaks down entirely at the quantum scale, so space-time might not be fabric at all. It might be a network of relations, an emergent thing that only pretends to be smooth when you zoom out. Which means even your bed isn't really here in any fixed sense. It's a fluctuating patch in a cosmic pattern, a temporary local illusion, like hotel Wi-Fi but more stable. And gravity, it's not pulling you down. It's pulling you into the path space-time is setting for your body. You're not resisting it. You're trusting it. That's what sleep is, right? Surrendering to the pull, letting yourself fall without flinching. And so you start to let go. You let your fingers sink deeper into the mattress. You let your mind follow the curve of the Earth. You let your thoughts orbit gently inward, spiraling not into panic, but into presence. You're not stuck in this moment. You're gliding through it, cradled by space-time, guided by curvature. And if your bed sheets feel a little heavier tonight, maybe it's not the humidity. Maybe it's just gravity giving you a sleepy little hug. Your eyes are closed now, but your mind is wide awake, locked onto a thought that's surprisingly sticky for 7 a.m. Can you touch a second, not hold it, not measure it, not chase it around your schedule like it owes you rent, but really touch it the second you're in, the one slipping away? Nope. And that's where the rabbit hole opens again. Major scientific fact. Time as we experience it feels like a sequence of moments. But physics doesn't see it that way. Many equations work just as well forwards as backwards, meaning theoretically, there's no reason time has to move only in one direction. The arrow of time is something we feel, but it doesn't show up naturally in the math. This is deeply inconvenient for your sense of reality. It's also deeply hilarious because your entire life, every deadline, heartbreak, birthday cake, and lost sock is built on the premise that there is a now moving steadily forward. But if that's just a story, who's telling it? Your brain, most likely. And your brain is a bit of a drama queen. It loves causality, one thing leading to another. It hates ambiguity. It needs to know what comes next, so it keeps building the illusion of flow. 1 second, then the next, then the next. But in physics, time might be static. Everything that has ever happened or will happen might already exist, which would make you, what? A character in a frozen storybook, a bead sliding along a timeline that doesn't care whether you're ready or not. Fact, the ancient Mayans tracked time in cycles, not a straight line. They didn't see it as progress, but as repetition rounds, returns, resets. There was no beginning or end, just motion through pattern. So maybe your 2 a.m. spiral isn't a breakdown. Maybe it's a rhythm. Scientists still debate whether time is an emergent property that is something that only exists when consciousness and entropy interact. In some theories, time is not fundamental at all. It's a byproduct like color. Light isn't red until you see it. Maybe time isn't real until you experience it. Which would explain why 5 minutes in traffic feels like a small eternity, and 3 hours with someone you love feels like 20 seconds. Because the clock isn't in charge. You are. Well, you and the laws of thermodynamics, and caffeine, and probably unresolved childhood memories. You stretch your legs slightly, stirring the covers. You imagine the room not as dark and quiet, but as suspended, frozen, as if time took a breath and held it, and you're floating inside that breath, like a spark frozen in an ice cube, a tiny now caught between before and after. Maybe the reason you can't touch a second is because you are one. Maybe you're the moment, brief, warmed by thought, gone before anyone else notices. You inhale, you exhale, and in that span, something changes. Not the world. You soften, your thoughts blur, and the second that just passed, well, it's gone now. But it was yours, and that's enough. The night feels endless, not in a bad way, just bottomless. Like the sky above your ceiling is a well with no bottom, and you're dangling in it, gently spinning, held only by your duvet and a very persistent curiosity. And suddenly a thought drifts in. Where exactly are you in the universe? Like if you had to draw an arrow pointing to your position, not in the neighborhood or the solar system, but in the cosmic. Everything, where would you aim? You blink into the dark. There's no center. Major scientific fact, the universe has no center and no edge. According to current models of cosmology, space itself is expanding uniformly in all directions. Every galaxy sees every other galaxy moving away. It's not that galaxies are flying through space away from a center. It's that space itself is stretching between everything. Picture a loaf of raisin bread rising in the oven. As it expands the raisins, galaxies all move away from each other. Not because they're moving through the dough, but because the dough itself is growing. You're one of those raisins, probably a squishy one, hopefully with cinnamon nearby. But that means weirdly, every point is the center. You, your bed, that weird cobweb in the corner, all of them central in their own coordinate frame. Audio fact, in 2011 scientists simulated a multiverse using equations from eternal inflation theory and found that in some versions you might be inside a universe shaped like a saddle. Not a sphere, not a donut, a saddle. So space might not just be big. It might be weirdly curved in ways that make it hard to define middle at all, which makes your late-night feeling of being lost a little more cosmic than you'd like. Because if there's no center, where are you going? You shift your weight slightly, adjusting your blanket like it'll anchor you better in the Milky Way. But deep down, you know the answer. You're not in the universe the way a marble is inside a jar. You are the universe, in one particular squishy breathing expression. Scientists still debate the true shape and extent of the universe. Is it infinite or finite but unbounded? Is it flat, open, or closed? The data seems to say it's flat on the largest scales, but the edges of that map remain fuzzy, possibly forever out of reach. So when you say, "I feel small," it's worth asking. Compared to what? Because in a cosmos with no center, no edge, and no objective location, small is just a story you tell, and you're the narrator. You turn onto your side and close your eyes. You picture galaxies blooming like bubbles, space stretching like taffy, and you, somewhere in the middle of nothing and everywhere at once. Maybe that's why sleep feels like falling into space, because it is. And the deeper you fall, the more space you become. You're not moving, not your arms, not your legs, not even your eyelids, and yet somehow, you're still falling. Not down, not even sideways exactly. It's more like a slant, a lean, a slow slide through something invisible. And you remember time and space aren't separate. They're a package deal. Major scientific fact. In Einstein's universe, time is woven together with space to form a single fabric, space-time. The more you move through space, the less you move through time, and vice versa. It's like you're always moving through something, even when you're at rest. You're just shifting your motion between spatial and temporal directions. Right now, you're lying down physically still, but you're speeding through time at the maximum rate allowed 1 second per second, 100 years per century, a full human life in one human life, which is honestly kind of elegant. Also a little terrifying. You picture yourself as a marble rolling down the time axis of the universe. Smooth, predictable, until it hits something, a memory, a moment, an emotion, and skips a beat. You've felt it. The weird pause when someone says something heavy, or the way time flies during a late-night YouTube rabbit hole but drips like cold molasses during awkward small talk. That's because your perception of time is elastic. It stretches and contracts depending on emotion, focus, even body temperature. Odd fact. Time seems to move faster as you age, partly because your brain processes fewer new images per second. Childhood feels longer because everything is new. Adulthood feels fast because your brain's like, been there. Seen that. Let's fast forward to dinner. So yeah, falling sideways through time isn't just poetic, it's personal. Scientists still debate whether this experience of now moving is a feature of consciousness or a fundamental aspect of reality. Some physicists believe that all points in time are equally real, past, present, and future, and that our experience of flow is just a trick of memory and anticipation. If that's true, you're not really traveling through time. You're unrolling, like a film strip being played one frame at a time. But here's a thought. What if you could move through both time and space at will? Where would you go back to a first kiss, forward to the last sunset? Or would you just pause right here, in this strange, cozy moment, on the edge of sleep where time is syrupy and space is soft? You shift slightly, adjusting your position on the bed. It's not much, but in space-time terms, it's everything, because even that tiny movement rewrites your coordinates. A new moment, a new here, a new now. You're always falling, through a dimension you can't touch, on a path you didn't choose but are beginning to appreciate. You are a diagonal thing, a quiet traveler gliding not just across space but through time. And this night, this stillness is part of the motion. You finally stop checking the clock, not because you're asleep yet, but because something's shifted. The obsession with time's passing has melted into something stranger, wonder. Because now you're thinking about beginnings, Not the daily ones like waking up or hitting the snooze button 5 times. But the beginning. Where did all this come from? Major scientific fact. The prevailing scientific model for the origin of the universe is the Big Bang. A moment around 13.8 billion years ago, when space and time themselves began expanding from an incredibly hot, dense state. Not an explosion in space, but an expansion of space. There was no before. Time itself was born in that moment. Wild right. That means this whole experience, your body, your breath, your blanket, even your confused dreams, is built on a one-time cosmic hiccup that's still echoing outward. You're riding a ripple that started before Earth was even a twinkle in the galaxy's eye. It's not a bang anymore. Now it's more of a boom. Odd fact, the afterglow of the Big Bang, the cosmic microwave background, still surrounds you. It's faint, cold, and everywhere. About 1% of the static on an old TV screen is literally leftover energy from the birth of the universe. So yes, that fuzzy screen wasn't just annoying. It was ancient, which makes your pillow currently squishing one ear a relic of cosmic evolution. You're not lying in the universe. You're lying as the universe looking back at itself, wondering how it all started. And like most deep questions, this one has holes. Scientists still debate what came before the Big Bang, or if before even makes sense. Some theories suggest a previous universe collapsed and rebounded. Others propose a quantum vacuum fluctuation, essentially a universe popping into existence like foam in a sea of possibility. Either way, the beginning isn't behind you, it's under you. It supports every second you breathe. It is every second you breathe. You roll onto your back again and stare up at the dark, the ceiling now feeling more like the edge of something infinite. And for a moment, it hits you. This isn't just bedtime. This is you resting inside a 13.8 billion-year-old experiment. A speck of consciousness wrapped in star stuff, listening for echoes of the first note in a symphony that still plays. There's something oddly comforting about that. You're not a mistake. You're not an afterthought. You're not even separate. You're part of the flow. You are the ripple. You're an old song still being sung, and the more you listen, the more you feel it. Your chest rising and falling in time with something too big to measure. You, the moment, the music, still going. You breathe in slowly, the kind of breath that accidentally becomes a sigh. Not of sadness, not boredom, just space. There's so much of it. And that's what your brain decides to chew on now. What is space really? You've always imagined it as a kind of stage, right? A backdrop. An emptiness where things happen. A cosmic blank canvas. But what if the canvas does things? Major scientific fact in modern physics, space isn't just emptiness. It has structure, it has properties. It can bend, ripple, and even fluctuate at the quantum level. In fact, space can expand like during the early inflationary period after the Big Bang, and it can curve depending on the distribution of mass and energy. So nothing isn't really nothing. It's something pretending to be nothing, which feels relatable, because honestly, you've done the same thing. Smiled when sad. Laughed when lost, pretended stillness when your thoughts were bouncing like rogue electrons. Space does that too. You picture it now, the vacuum of the cosmos, dark and silent but brimming beneath with quantum jitters. Little virtual particles popping into and out of existence like cosmic static. Gone before you can even say, "Hey, wait, come back." Odd fact, the vacuum of space isn't empty at all. It contains a seething froth of quantum energy. In fact, some theories suggest that this vacuum energy is responsible for the accelerated expansion of the universe, dark energy, the mysterious force pushing galaxies apart faster and faster. So the quietest thing in the universe may actually be the most powerful, just like your thoughts at night. Soft, private, but strong enough to keep you awake for hours. Scientists still debate what space actually is. Some think it's a fundamental entity. Others believe it emerges from entangled quantum information, meaning that what you experience as distance or direction might just be relationships between data points. So when you say you need space, maybe your brain is echoing something deeper, a longing not for distance, but for clarity, for quiet, for a pause in the fabric. You stare into the dark and imagine a single point, a dot, then another, and suddenly between them, space. It was never there. It was between, just like the pause between thoughts, the gap between words, the breath between heartbeats. Space isn't the absence of things. It's the possibility of things. It's the room for you to exist. And in that thought, there's relief. You don't need to fill the night. You just need to rest in it. Like a star resting in a pocket of gravity. Like a thought floating in a soft field of maybe. You are not alone in the dark. You are the dark. And the dark is full of potential. The room is warm, still, silent. But in your mind, crack, shatter, reverse, spiral. Because tonight, the question that keeps your eyes wide open is this. Why does time have a direction? Why do eggs break but never unbreak? Why does smoke rise but never unrise? Why do moments stack like books but never unstack? Major scientific fact. The arrow of time is a concept rooted in the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy always increases in an isolated system. Entropy is a measure of disorder, and over time systems evolve from ordered to disordered states. That's why ice melts, buildings crumble, and you never find all your missing socks in one drawer again. In other words, chaos always wins, but it does it slowly with style. That's what gives time its forward feeling. Entropy increases, so things seem to move from past to future. But in physics, the equations don't care. You can run them backwards, and they still work. It's like watching a movie where the story makes sense in reverse, but only emotionally confusing if you've spilled popcorn. Odd fact, a broken teacup falling off a table and shattering into 20 pieces is entirely natural. But the reverse, a shattered cup spontaneously leaping up and reassembling mid-air, is technically not impossible. Just so improbable it may never happen even once in the entire history of the universe. So, yeah, that gives you a weird kind of comfort. Time feels reliable not because it's mechanical, but because it's messy. It's the mess that moves us. Scientists still debate whether the arrow of time is fundamental or emergent. Some theories propose that time's one-way nature arises only from special conditions, like the universe starting in a highly ordered state. Others wonder if time's flow could reverse in some distant corner of the multiverse. And now your pillow feels like it's part of a broader conspiracy of softness. You're thinking of spirals now, how galaxies spin, how seashells curl, how your thoughts loop back to the same idea from new angles like dreams rehearsing a script. Maybe time isn't an arrow. Maybe it's a spiral staircase. You keep climbing, but things look familiar just from higher up. Or maybe it's a slinky, tumbling slowly down the stairs of entropy, giggling the whole way. You close your eyes. Picture that teacup flying upward in reverse, each shard rejoining the whole. the table unshaking, the hand pulling away, and you realize the beauty isn't in the reversal, it's in the fall, in the break, in the way things scatter. Because every scatter writes a new story, and every story leads forward. And tonight, you are falling too. Not apart, just into something soft, slow, irreversible, like time. You're drifting now, not asleep, but not quite awake either. That in-between place where reality bends, where thoughts become stories and stories become memories before they've even finished forming. It's here, half floating in the sheets, that you start to wonder. What if time didn't move forward? What if it were like a river with no flow, just a still, silent lake of everything all at once? Major scientific fact in the block universe. Interpretation of space-time, all moments past, present, future exist simultaneously. Instead of time passing, your consciousness simply experiences one slice of the block at a time, like flipping through the pages of a book that's already written. So every moment of your life already is. The first breath, the last, the heartbreak you thought you'd never heal from, the moment you tasted watermelon at the beach. They all still exist somewhere in space-time, which is kind of comforting, and also utterly strange, because it means you're not moving through time. You're unfolding in it. Odd fact, in 2014, neuroscientists discovered that rats' brains can replay sequences of activity, both forward and backward, while they rest. It's like their memories aren't chained to time's arrow at all. They're fluid, bouncing through experience however they like. You wonder if your brain is doing that now, rewinding something tender, skipping forward to something you haven't lived yet, remixing a few dreams with things you saw on TikTok. Scientists still debate whether the block universe truly represents reality or just a useful mathematical model. Some argue that only the present is real. Others suggest that the future is already fixed, and free will is an illusion. Still, others propose that consciousness is what creates time, like a flashlight sweeping across a film reel. You curl in a little tighter. Suddenly, the night feels less like an obstacle and more like a map. You imagine your life laid out in pages like a graphic novel co-authored by physics and poetry. Each panel a frozen moment. Each breath a brushstroke. You can't see them all at once, but they're there, waiting. You remember a joke someone told you: time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana, and you smile in the dark, because even absurdity exists in the block universe. And you're here, on this page, fully printed, still warm from the press. No need to rush ahead. No need to rewind. Just read. Just be. This moment, it's eternal whether you notice it or not. But you did, and that's enough. You sigh softly, your breath making a tiny dent in the stillness. And something tickles your thoughts, an idea sneaking in through the mental mist. If space can bend, can time? Major scientific fact. Yes, time bends, warps, and stretches. According to Einstein's general relativity, gravity doesn't just affect mass, it affects time itself. The stronger the gravity, the slower time moves. That's called gravitational time dilation. It's been confirmed by comparing clocks on satellites and clocks on Earth. The ones higher up, farther from Earth's gravity, tick slightly faster. So technically, if you live in the mountains, you age faster than someone at sea level, by nanoseconds. But still, time travel, baby. And if you get close enough to something really massive like a black hole, time practically stops. Odd fact. The 2014 movie Interstellar wasn't kidding. Near the supermassive black hole, gargantua, time slows so much that 1 hour equals 7 Earth years. That's not sci-fi drama, that's physics. Extreme Einstein-approved physics. So next time someone says they lost track of time, you can remind them. At least you weren't on the event horizon. Scientists still debate what really happens inside a black hole. Is time frozen at the event horizon? Does it continue inside in some twisted, unknowable geometry? Is there a singularity, a bounce, a portal to another universe? The equations get messy, like ruin your whiteboard messy. But one thing's clear, time is not a constant. It's a negotiable contract between you and gravity. You blink into the quiet room and try to imagine your own time stretching, bending slightly around your bed like soft rubber. Not just the seconds, but the feeling of them, like taffy or dreams. Time doesn't just flow, it drapes. It pools in memories. It sprints during panic. It slows when someone's hand brushes yours unexpectedly. And now curled under the covers, gravity holds you gently. Not like a prison, but like a blanket. The Earth's mass pressing time into a shape that fits your heartbeat, that matches your breath, that keeps you here grounded in this fragile second. So maybe time isn't out to get you. Maybe it's always been trying to keep up with you, wrap around you, cradle you. You smile just a little, because even as your muscles soften and your thoughts fade, you know you're not falling behind. You're just falling into the curvature, like light bending through glass, like stars curving around their galaxies, like dreams slipping into sleep, gently, unhurried, bent toward wonder. You're nearly gone now, fading gently between thoughts where ideas drip instead of march. But one final curiosity hangs on like static in your pillow. If time and space are connected, could they break? Could the whole thing tear? Major scientific fact. According to some cosmological models, space-time itself might not be immune to rupture. In theories involving cosmic inflation, topological defects called domain walls, cosmic strings or textures might emerge from the early universe's rapid expansion regions, where space-time didn't smooth out perfectly. These could represent literal kinks or breaks in the fabric of reality. Now don't worry, there's no space-time hole lurking under your bed, just the sock you lost last May, but it does mean reality might have scars. The universe you live in is likely not perfectly smooth. It's wrinkled, puckered, textured, a slightly lumpy blanket of being. Odd fact, in 2023, astronomers detected what might be hints of cosmic strings, ultra-thin, high-energy filaments, left over from the Big Bang by watching how distant quasars flickered. If these strings exist, they could stretch across galaxies, yet be thinner than an atom. Space could have stretch marks. Time, too. Scientists still debate whether these defects are real or mathematical ghosts, artifacts of models trying to capture something beyond our reach. Some believe such structures would have catastrophic effects. Others suggest they've always been there hidden, like seams in a well-worn sweater. So what does it mean for you? Maybe not much. Maybe everything. Because if space-time has edges, scars, or glitches, then the normal you feel isn't guaranteed. It's just current, like a river flowing between rocks you can't see. And that makes your little moment here, your room, your mind, your slow inhale feel even more miraculous. Because against odds, you exist in a region of cosmic calm. A smooth patch of stitched-up space-time where dreams can bloom. Maybe your dreams even use those wrinkles, those seams, to sneak through. You wonder if dreaming is what happens when consciousness snags on a loose thread of space-time and starts unraveling alternate realities. You picture yourself drifting along that thread, swinging gently over the edge of logic into something wilder. Somewhere the universe might have cracked a little, and let in the light, or the night. Either way, here you are, unbothered, unbroken, wrapped in a cosmos with secrets beneath every surface. Time isn't perfect. Space isn't clean, but it's yours for now. Soft, dark, beautifully stitched. You're weightless now, not in body, but in mind. Each thought floats like dust in a sunbeam, suspended slow, untouchable. And one last question gently nudges its way in. What if space and time aren't real, like at all? Major scientific fact. In some leading-edge theories of physics, especially in quantum gravity and loop quantum gravity, space and time might be emergent phenomena, not fundamental ingredients of the universe, but patterns that arise from something deeper, stranger, more abstract. According to this view, what we call space-time could just be the large-scale behavior of more basic quantum-level information. It's like how temperature isn't a thing by itself. It's a measurement of how particles move. So maybe time isn't a river. Maybe it's a readout on the dashboard of something bigger. Maybe reality is just a conversation between points of view. Odd fact, in 2019, researchers proposed that space-time could emerge from quantum entanglement, the bizarre connection between particles that seem to know what each other are doing instantly, no matter the distance. In this theory, geometry shapes distance. Even time emerges from the relationships between entangled bits of information. You don't travel through space. You are space defined by how you're connected, which is kind of romantic, actually. You aren't alone because you can't be. Scientists still debate whether this view will ever produce testable predictions. Right now, it's more math than microscope. But it's gaining traction in theoretical circles. If space and time are illusions, then reality is a web, not a grid, a pulse, not a clock. And that would mean every moment you've ever experienced is a chord in a larger harmony. Not one after another, but all at once. Your childhood backyard, the song you cried to last Tuesday, this warm bed. They aren't in time. They are time braided together in the melody that is you. You blink slowly. Everything feels both near and far. Maybe that's why memories return in dreams, not because they're old, but because they're still there, woven into your now. You're not walking through time like a hallway. You're resonating, like a bell. And every tick of the clock isn't a step forward. It's a vibration, a thrum. Your life is a frequency, and space is the silence that lets you be heard. You smile in the dark, because now you feel it truly. You're not falling. You're not drifting. You're ringing. And the universe, it hears you. And now here you are, hovering at the edge of everything. Thoughts slowing, muscles releasing, breath as light as a feather resting on a breeze. You made it. One last whisper of curiosity brushes the inside of your skull like a breeze under a door. If space and time are flexible, emergent, possibly even illusions, then what's left, what holds it all together? Major scientific fact, according to some of the deepest theories in physics, including string theory and quantum information science, the universe may be underpinned by something even more fundamental than particles or space-time information. Pure, abstract, shimmering relationships. Everything we observe might emerge from patterns in how information is processed, transferred, and encoded across reality. In this view, you are not made of atoms, you are made of stories. Odd fact, in 2018, researchers used black hole entropy formulas to estimate that a human being contains roughly 10 or 45 bits of information. That's a 1 followed by 45 zeros. That's how much cosmic code it takes to write you. Every freckle, every forgotten dream, every time you said, "I'm fine," but weren't. You are not just part of the universe. You are the universe briefly organized into something that can notice. Scientists still debate whether this it-from-bit theory of reality is testable or just a poetic abstraction. But more and more physicists are leaning into the idea that reality is not made of things but of interactions. So you don't exist because space allows it. You exist because connection allows it. You're not an island floating in time. You're a node in an infinite web. A single glowing ember of awareness in a field of flickering lights. And if that's true, then your thoughts tonight, they ripple. They connect. They are part of something vast, not in size but in meaning. You don't have to understand it. You just have to feel it. Right here. Right now. Where your body melts into the mattress. Where your breath aligns with distant galaxies. You are not drifting in space. You are held by it. Not falling through time, but woven into it. A soft, steady thread in a story far older than stars. So sleep now, little frequency, little flicker, little ripple in the web. You've explored deep places tonight. You've asked impossible questions, and you didn't find answers. You found wonder. You're still here, not quite awake, not quite gone. Suspended in that perfect stillness where thought becomes breath and breath becomes silence. Tonight, you wandered far. You asked what space and time really are, and found out they're not what they seem. They're not boxes we live in, not lines we walk along. They are fluid, flexible, sometimes imaginary. You learned that time can slow, bend, and even stop. That space can stretch, ripple, and maybe even emerge from something more basic than matter. You stood beside black holes. You tiptoed through tangled dimensions. You touched the edges of cosmic strings, and the strange idea that reality itself might just be made of information. The most comforting truth, you are part of all of it. Not just floating in the universe, but woven into it. An essential thread in the fabric of everything. A gentle, conscious pulse echoing in the quiet rhythm of space-time. It's okay if you didn't grasp every concept. Even the brightest minds are still wondering, still debating, still dreaming. Because wonder doesn't require answers. It just asks you to be present. And now as your body softens and your thoughts grow dim, you can let go of questions. You've held them long enough tonight. Let your mind blur at the edges. Let the spiral of time cradle you. Let the stars whisper in a language only dreams understand. You've made space for rest. You've curved your night into meaning. You've touched the outer shell of infinity and smiled. Sleep now, little thinker. The universe will be here when you wake. Soft, strange, and still waiting for you. End of script. Good night.